and welcome to GameSack. Now, the 32-bit generation had a plethora of 3D polygon games, or is it plethora or plethora?
Plethora, I believe.
Okay. Anyway, we're looking at some of the 2D games that showed up on those consoles.
Yeah, that was the whole point of the 32-bit generation, was to move away from 2D into 3D, but luckily some of these developers stayed and said, you know what, we're still going to make some of these 2D games, and let's take a look at some of them.
Yeah.
Here is Heart of Darkness for the PlayStation. This is a platformer in the veins of Prince of Persia and Out of This World. In fact, the creator of this game was the creator of Out of This World, or as you Eurotypes like to call it, Another World. The game is dubbed as a cinematic platformer, but I'll be honest, I've never used that term before this review. It makes sense though, as you play the game it definitely has a cinematic feel to it. You control Andy, who seems to be a normal kid. He gets in trouble at school by sleeping on the desk. He loves his dog Whiskey, and he has a treehouse that's full of working inventions. Just a normal kid, right? Every kid invents tons of things, and of course they're all working too. So Andy and Whiskey are at the park watching a solar eclipse. They have amazing eyeballs too, because both of them stare at the sun and don't seem to go blind. I want that power. Something weird happens and Whiskey gets taken away to another world. Andy won't have any of that, so he goes back to his treehouse to get his spaceship that he invented. Luckily, he knows exactly where Whiskey was taken, and he wastes no time getting there. You crash land your spaceship, and the game starts right from that point. Andy controls really well and is very responsive. This is nice, as with other games like this, the controls usually feel very sluggish. Not here though. The way the game plays is that you need to figure out how to clear each screen by solving puzzles all throughout your cinematic experience. Some of the screens are really easy to see what you have to do to progress, while others aren't as easy. The puzzles sometimes take place on multiple screens. There's been more than a few times where I've been sitting on a screen wondering what the hell am I supposed to do when I'm actually setting up the solution for another area. It feels really good when you finally put everything together and you're able to advance. And of course, a lot of the game is trial and error. You'll die a lot figuring out how to progress to the next area. And luckily, since you'll give up the ghost many times, checkpoints aren't set too far apart. Nobody likes to die in video games, but in this one it's quite entertaining. There's more than a few ways that Andy will die, from getting ripped apart to being eaten alive. It never seems to get old no matter how many times I've seen it, even though you're watching a child die. I think it's because the animation is so smooth it really gives a realistic feel to it. In fact, the whole game animates really smoothly and everything looks great. The environments that you play through are all highly detailed and very colorful. There's no music while you play, but all the levels are filled with ambient sounds that really help draw you in. I think this works really well and honestly feel that music in the level would lessen the experience. There is music in the game, but it's mainly reserved for cutscenes. The cutscenes are very entertaining to watch, and they really help keep the story and action intact.
Oh, makes a change. Master, the boys in your kingdom. Get him!
Overall, this is a great game, and I've had a lot of fun with it in the past. It's not super long, and once you figure out all the puzzles, you can whip through it in a few hours, but what a fun time you'll have.
This is Darius Gaiden on the Saturn, which was made by Taito and published by Acclaim. This is a fairly early release for the Saturn and is probably my favorite Darius game, at least so far. I haven't played them all yet. As you might imagine, this plays like other Darius games in the way that it's set up. You've got your regular shot, the little missile bomb thingy, as well as a super gravity bomb which you have a limited stock of. Okay, I guess the other Darius games don't have the super gravity bomb, but you get my drift. I love using this bomb because it sucks all of the enemy bullets into it before exploding into damaging lightning, and it looks really cool. Power-ups appear when certain enemies are destroyed. The red ones power up your normal shot, the green ones power up your missile bomb thingy, and the blue ones give you a shield which protects you for several hits. What's interesting is that there are various ranks and sub-ranks of the weapons. Looking at the meter on the top of the screen, you'll see how many more icons you need to pick up to increase the rank. Hell, even the shield can be powered up. When you lose a life, your normal shot will reset back to 0, but it's often not too difficult to power yourself back up into an acceptable fighter. There's also other icons that appear. A purple one will give you an extra super gravity shot, the gray one will give you bonus points, and there's even some gold ones somewhere which will destroy all the enemies on screen. At the end of each stage is a boss, or rather a huge battleship, as the game calls them. The game is 7 stages long, but there are 28 different stages. That's because you can choose which stage you want to go next after you win a stage, which is typical with the Darius franchise. That's a lot of stages, and some of them are similar to one another but not exact. However, some of the boss battleships do appear in more than one stage. There are mid-bosses, and most of them have an orb on them. If you shoot at this orb instead of just destroying the mid-boss, it'll come floating across the screen. You can grab this and then suddenly the mid-boss is fighting on your side. This is pretty cool, but unfortunately it always dies before you can make it to the huge battleship! The gameplay can be intense at times, and I don't have any complaints about the control. There's a tiny bit of slowdown here and there, but it's really not too bad. I feel that the game's difficulty is fair, though there probably could be another continue or two. They only give you 2, but I found that you can take the controller and move it over to port 2 and continue as player 2 to get a couple more continues on top of that. You can also punch in a secret code to get 9 continues if you really need them. There are no 3D assets in here at all, and by that I mean there's no polygons. Everything is done with 2D backgrounds and sprites. They really went all out with the colors and the detail. There really are a lot of 3D looking effects and transparencies. Some levels may even have you thinking that they did include polygons, but nope. This is based on the arcade game of the same name, which runs on Taito's F3 system hardware, and it has no support for polygons. And the Saturn version is a damn near exact port. Now, one thing that's really interesting is the music. It gives the entire game a creepy, almost unsettling feel. Check it out. Of course, I can't help but like it because it's so different and weird, and certainly not in a bad way. There's lots of replayability here, especially if you want to see all 28 stages. You won't notice much loading at all, and the game feels fairly seamless. I definitely recommend this one, but unfortunately it's starting to go up in price. There's also a PlayStation port, but it has a lot more slowdown. This game is also available on various Taito compilations. Check it out.
This is Blood Omen, Legacy of Cain on the PlayStation. It's an action-adventure game developed by Silicon Knights and released by Crystal Dynamics. Oh man, was I ever hyped about this game back when it was released. Once I started playing it, I was very satisfied with the final product. Yeah, it has some problems, but the fun factor outweighs the negatives by far. I remember being completely amazed at all the dialogue throughout the game. Simon Templeman does the voice of Cain, and I think he does a really good job. He definitely gives Cain an air of nobility.
This ancient vial bears with it a dark gift indeed.
Cain talks all throughout the game, telling you about his powers and gives you descriptions of towns you visit and places you'll see. The storytelling here really makes the game feel special. You've got to remember that I was coming from the Super Nintendo at this time and I didn't have a Turbo CD or Sega CD, so I wasn't used to this kind of awesomeness. Anyway, you take control of Cain, who has just become a vampire. He's on a quest to heal the land of Nosgoth by restoring the 9 pillars. To do this, he must find, kill, and return the tokens of 9 sorcerers to the pillars which restore peace. It's not bad as far as storyline goes, and it's all pieced together through cutscenes which definitely show their age. Yeah, they don't look great, but they're still very effective. So Cain isn't just a vampire, he's a sword-wielding vampire, and of course those are the best kind. You begin the game with basic armor and sword, and they're fine for the start. Battling some of the enemy soldiers can be tedious, as they take lots of hits and they'll also do a lot of damage to you. To avoid being hit, it's best just to swing and retreat and keep doing this until you've gotten them down to where you can suck their blood. Yep, sucking blood is how this vampire restores his life. You'll be doing it all throughout the game, and you know what? It never seems to get old. Not only that, but Cain can change shape into other forms like a wolf and a bat. The wolf is good for jumping on ledges and over spiked areas. You'll need to use this form quite a lot. The bat form you can't control. All this does is let you transport yourself around the map to temples that you've activated. Cain can also talk to villagers, but he needs to wear a disguise or the villagers will either ignore him or attack him. After you talk to a villager, be sure to kill them and drink their blood if you're low. As you start to make your way through the story, Cain will get stronger. His life bar vial will grow, and so will his magic. He'll also visit these blood fountains that will raise certain attributes like making him stronger or protecting him from rain.
The rain will do you no harm.
Yep, rain can hurt an unprotected vampire. I always liked how evil these fountains looked. The game runs on a day and night cycle. When it's night out, it's really tough to see. At first, I thought this was just bad game design, but one of Cain's magic abilities is to use a light spell which will brighten things up a bit. This is also useful in caves since they're always dark. There's two problems that I found with this game. The first one is the loading times. I mean, they're not long per se, but the game does load a lot. I've kind of gotten used to it, but it's still annoying at times. The second problem is with how the camera works. When Cain changes direction, the camera shifts to make more of the screen viewable. It's a nice thought, but it doesn't work well since you'll be constantly changing directions. Again, after playing the game for a while, you'll get used to it, but it'll take some time and it'll be annoying. The game is huge and I've beaten it in the past. I was hoping to still have my memory card saved, but I don't anymore. I'd like to spend the time to play through it again as it's a fun experience. You should try it too.
Reputed to have been ripped from the chest of the greatest vampire to have ever existed, Janos Audron, the heart of darkness restores vampiric unlife. Life is precious, Janos discovered, as it was torn, throbbing and bleeding from his own body.
All right, we're back. Damn, dude would not shut up in Blood Omen Legacy of Cain.
He sure likes to talk a lot, but luckily he has a good voice for it, so.
Yeah, anyway, we've got more 32-bit 2D action. It's kind of hard for me to remember what the hell we're talking about because 32-bit 2D, too many numbers in there.
Yeah, a lot of numbers.
Anyway, I'm really stupid, people. Let's check out Silhouette Mirage by Treasure for the Saturn. This is a super gimmicky game just as you'd expect from Treasure. Basically, there are two different types of enemies, those who are silhouettes and those who are mirages. You'll notice that when you face right, you're red, and when you face left, you're blue. Silhouettes can only be damaged when you're blue, and mirages when you're red. Of course, this makes absolutely no sense because why would an enemy be damaged just because you're facing one way or the other? Oh well, whatever, doesn't matter because that is how the game is set up. If you attack a same color enemy, you'll instead drain their spirit power, which directly relates to their attack strength. In fact, you have spirit power too. The life meter is on top and the spirit power meter is on the bottom. When I first got this game back when it came out, I really didn't like it at all. I played it a few times maybe and just felt that the play mechanics were too over-designed for their own good. I put it back on the shelf and it remained unplayed for nearly 20 years. Every time I looked at it, I just wasn't interested in giving it another go. But hey, it's clearly a 2D game and it's also a 32-bit game, so here we are. To tell you the truth, I like the game a lot more now, but honestly, I do feel it is still a little bit over-designed. I don't enjoy having to attack enemies while facing a certain direction. You can switch which of your sides is red and blue, but it's slow in switching and it eats up a ton of spirit power. There's a shop where you can buy weapons, and this is the only point which I really wish was in English. Still, it's not very difficult to figure out. Each stage offers upgraded weapons. So in stage 2, you can buy level 2 weapons and so on and so forth. It can be kinda tough earning enough coins sometimes. If you continue, it takes away a lot of your money, so the best advice I can give is for you to never ever die. But good luck with that, as this game can be pretty tough, mainly due to the gimmicky way of attacking and defending. Speaking of defending, you also have a shield that comes up with the A button. This can be handy because it'll deflect same color attacks, but is completely useless against opposite color attacks. This is completely backwards to how your main weapons work. You do have other moves like grabbing an enemy and smacking them to death when you're close. This is a good way to earn coins. You also have a triple jump, which is really nice. The levels themselves can seem kind of under-designed because you'll often just stop and then fight a ton of the same enemy again and again for a few minutes before moving on. A few of the bosses take forever to beat, especially this one, and it can be very disorientating as you can lose track of where you are. Now, don't get me wrong, this game isn't awful and there is a lot of fun to be had. And the best way to ensure that you do have fun is to get the right weapon as early as you can. For me, the whirly thingy is the most fun weapon by far. That's what this little icon is in the shop, by the way. In fact, I was able to get a lot further in the game just using only this weapon. The graphics are really nice. I really like the cool reflections in the glass on the buildings here. You can see the boss approaching you from the outside of the screen and it's a super badass effect. There's tons of great color, scaling, rotation, transparencies, and many layers of parallax scrolling. There's also some cool situations like these people in the building waking up and throwing stuff at you because you're being too loud with your battle. The music is also extremely good for the most part. In fact, it might be some of the best music in any Treasure game. This was also released on the PlayStation, but the graphics are missing some effects here and there. And Working Designs, who translated it and released it in the US, decided to tamper with the gameplay, which they absolutely love to do. Now supposedly they made the gameplay worse and more difficult, but in my first time playing it here, I really can't tell any difference as far as that's concerned. Yeah, the cool transparent reflections aren't here, but there are things in both versions that are better than the other. Still, I'd say the Saturn version is probably the definitive one though. I do feel it would have been better if it were dumbed down slightly, like letting you switch color back and forth quickly at any time, just like in Ikaruga. It's too bad that the Saturn version here was only released in Japan and is chock full of Japanese text. Don't let that deter you though. As of this review, it currently goes for about $50 on either system.
Here's Mega Man 8 on the PlayStation, released in the US in 1997. This is the first game in the original series to make its appearance on a 32-bit system. Being a 32-bit game, you'd expect it to get the treatment and have lots of mind-blowing special effects showing off what the systems back then could do. Well yeah, there's some cool stuff going on, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. The game starts out with a fully animated intro that shows off a lot of characters and enemies from previous games. Being the 10th anniversary of Mega Man, I'm sure Capcom wants you to feel really nostalgic and start to cry. Well, I didn't cry, but I did feel some nostalgia. Starting the game, you get another animation that tells the story. It has to do with two robots that are fighting and fall to Earth. They're emitting a huge energy level, and Dr. Light is worried that it might fall into the hands of evil, so he sends Mega Man to figure it out. Okay, so here's where the action starts. You fight your way through an introductory stage on the island where these two robots crashed. After you beat that, then things start to feel like the old Mega Man. You'll be able to choose the stage and boss you want to tackle. As with all games in the past, the difficulty is way up there from the beginning. Enemies have patterns that you don't recognize, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of frustration learning all these patterns. And for good measure, the developers have the enemies respawn just off screen like the old NES games. But as you start to get the hang of how the game plays, it becomes much easier. And of course, if you have the correct weapon you acquired from a boss, it'll make battles even easier and a lot more fun. A couple of new things have been added which I found extremely helpful. Firstly, there's a checkpoint midway through each stage. Even if you lose all your lives, you'll continue from this checkpoint. That's huge. Secondly, you can now save your game. After you beat each level, you'll get the option to save, and this is one of the best things to happen to this series. Passwords are great and all, but saving is even better. After you clear the first 4 stages, you get another cutscene furthering the story. Again, it's pretty entertaining, but the best part has to be Dr. Light's voice.
But I've never seen this type on Earth. I don't know where this energy came from, but cannot let it fall into Dr. Wowie's hands.
Holy crap, I laugh every time I hear it, and did he just say Dr. Wowie? I think he means Dr. Wily, but his thick accent makes it hard to tell. This is not the voice I've heard in my head for Dr. Light over the years, but it's funny as hell.
When we find that meteor, we'll find Dr. Wowie.
Speaking of funny voices, what do you think of Rush's voice?
Let's go, Rush!
It's like a comedy hour playing this game, and I can't take the cutscene serious with this kind of humor. Even Frostman's voice is hilarious.
I'm Frostman.
I'm laughing the entire time I'm fighting him.
I'll crush you. I will beat you. I'll make a popsicle of you.
Anyways, before you get to choose from the last 4 stages, you fight your way through another introductory type stage. Mega Man controls great, just like he always has. In this game, you can collect bolts throughout each stage. Well, that's if you can figure out how to get the bolts. After each stage, there's a shop at Dr. Light's place that you can spend your collected bolts on items that will help you out. One awesome one would be this one, where you won't get pushed back when you take a hit. Another cool feature that I liked was getting helper characters on Tengu Man's stage. It plays like a shooter, and these characters really help out. Overall, this is a great game. The graphics are sharp, colorful, and detailed. The game actually has a very enjoyable soundtrack. It also came out on the Saturn, where it featured more bosses, a sound test, and an art gallery, and things like that. Can you tell the difference in this brave and daring comparison here? Mega Man definitely made a great appearance in 32-bit glory. Too bad 8 was the last of the original series on a 32-bit platformer, or even physically for that matter.
Elevator Action Returns is a really cool action game on the Saturn from Taito. This one is based on the arcade game, which uses Taito's F3 board, just like Darius Gaiden. They didn't want to do the conversion themselves this time, so they had Ving do the honors like they did with a couple of different Taito Saturn ports. The gameplay is reminiscent of the original arcade game Elevator Action, which is also on this disc and can be unlocked via a code or by beating the game. That one is a damn tough game. Anyway, at the start, this one lets you select from 3 different characters, each with their own slightly different attributes. You start out in a similar building, going down just like before. But eventually it explodes in half and you suddenly realize that you're in a much more kick-ass game. This one features doors you can go into, kind of like Rolling Thunder, only different. The only doors you can go into are the blue doors and the red doors. Going into the blue doors initiates some shuffling icons. Press the button to stop them and that's what you get. Usually it's points, more life, or a restock of your sub-weapon. These doors are optional, but it's a really good idea to go into them if you can. The red doors are all mandatory to go into. You have no choice, you have no say, you have to go in them if you want to continue on with the game. Now, I'm not really sure what you're doing in there, but the game goes crazy and sets off an alarm if you miss one. The alarm will keep going until you get your ass into that red door. The doors say something about data, so I guess maybe you're stealing data? I hope it's good data, like a memory card save file or something. Just hope it's not a GameCube memory card, as those tend to get corrupt. Anyway, you fend off a ton of foes by blasting them down. They really put a lot of effort into some of the death animations. They're splattering blood, and sometimes they even leave behind a blood stain on the wall. I also like how they catch on fire in the right situations. This is not your granddaddy's Elevator Action, that's for sure. You even get to shoot dogs! I hope they have rabies or something, because I don't think I'd like shooting a normal, healthy dog. And from the sound they make, I don't think they like getting shot. You can, of course, upgrade your shot to a more powerful weapon, and you also have sub-weapons which you use like a bomb. You move up or down elevators to get where you need to go. You can control the elevators when you're on them, but otherwise you need to wait for them to come to you. Be careful, because the elevators and lifts will crush you if they come down when you're under them. This is a very strange world that this game takes place in. There are elevators all over the place, and many of them only move between a single floor or two. Who the hell would ever design a building like this? Imagine bringing in the groceries or something. It's so convoluted and it would take forever. Oh well, not my problem. There's lots of cool locations in the game, like this airport. Now, I'm not sure how all these guys got past security, but you get to take the fight inside of the airplane. I'm betting that this is a flight that's not going to be taking off on time, especially with all the blood flying around. Well, we just blew the plane in half. I hope the passengers have fun waiting in the terminal for hours on end. God, I love airports. Can you tell? There aren't really boss fights in most levels, but instead you take on a swarm of enemies all at once. It can get kinda tough because you don't always see someone who's about to shoot you until it's too late, since there's so much detail and the enemies can kinda blend in at times. You get 3 continues and you can switch characters when you continue. Once you run out, you can do the Darius Gaiden trick and just switch controller ports to get 3 more continues. The graphics are really good. Everything is extremely small, but I love the detail in here. The animations are also great. There's some scaling artifacts that you can see when the game scrolls vertically, but that's actually in the arcade version too. In fact, as far as I can tell, this is an exact port of the arcade game. Even the sound and music is identical, and it's pretty good, though kind of mellow. Unfortunately, this game is getting extremely pricey and going for around $250 a minimum these days. Hell, just pretend it's a Neo Geo game and it'll suddenly seem like a screaming good deal. This is a great action game, and you can find inferior versions of it in various Taito compilations.
Alright, there you have it. 6 great games from the 32-bit era that were in 2D.
Wow, so 2D. Anyway, we have some other 2D games in our collection in the 32-bit era that we'd like to cover, but what are some that you'd like to see us cover if we cover this topic again? And I know I'm saying the word cover a lot because we want to cover these games.
And I hope we have them, so we can actually talk about them. If not, we're going to have to go game hunting.
Yeah, thrift store shopping. I'm sure they'll be at all the thrift stores because
Everywhere.
everyone wants the 3D games. That's what the 32-bit era is about.
Right.
3D.
Screw 2D, let's get 3D.
Yeah. Anyway, let us know in the meantime. Thank you for watching GameSack. Things don't always go smoothly when making GameSack. For example, during the elevator action sequence, my voice didn't want to cooperate. Take a listen. There aren't really boss fights in most levels, but instead you just take on a swarm of enemies all at once. There really aren't boss fights on most levels. There really aren't boss... What the hell? There really aren't boss fights on most levels, but instead you take on a swarm of enemies all at once. There really aren't boss fight. What the f***? There really aren't there really aren't boss fights in most levels, but you take on a swarm of enemies all at once. Can't do this.